welcome to Best Laid Plans. This is your host, Sarah Hart-Unger, and this is the podcast where we talk all things planning and planning adjacent. So first, a little bit of housekeeping from last week. Thank you guys so much. I got a number of emails after I shared my personal disappointment and how I processed it when my own Best Laid Plans did not pan out the way I wanted to this summer, and I appreciate that. Inquiring minds may want to know if my Hobonichi did arrive on time in order for me to start July 1 fresh. And I have to say, Jet Pens did come through. That planner arrived on my doorstep on July 1st as promised, and I set it up that very night. So I am now working in a fresh Hobonichi cousin that does not have memories of things that aren't happening all over it. So that is done and dusted, and I'm very happy about it. I did make a planning video for you today, and unlike last time, I decided to keep that separate from the podcast episode since it is a little bit hard to listen to a podcast where someone keeps referring to things on a screen that you can't see, I know. And so if you are interested in seeing that video, just go to my YouTube channel. I think it should be up today, or maybe it already came out, but it is a daily planning video where I show you how I set up my daily page in the Hobonichi cousin and how I refer to my weekly layout as well to inform my daily goals. So if you've ever wanted to see me do that in real time, that video will enable you to do so. That's number 2. The final piece of housekeeping is that I have decided that we are launching a Best Laid Plans Academy 2.0 round 2. So a fall round of Best Laid Plans Academy 2.0 starting in September. The sessions are going to be 3 p.m. Eastern time, and they're going to start on September 9th. They're mostly going to be held on Wednesdays. Actually, I think they're all on Wednesdays. They're not every Wednesday. They skip a couple, and there are 8 sessions in all. But I've had a blast running the session this summer. I'm going to get all kinds of feedback. That session is almost done, not entirely done. And so I hope to make that one even more polished and better for you, although I think it's going great. This is my course where I will guide you through every level of planning to set up your own planner piece or functional system. So we talk about calendar management, and I have people deep dive into how they do their calendaring. We talk about task management, and you're to curate your own task management algorithm that works for you. And then we talk about different styles of planning from yearly scope all the way down to daily so that people can refine their own tactics. We do this in a group setting where there's lots of support and camaraderie, and then I'm available via chat throughout the course for anybody that needs help, as well as these live sessions that we do together. So if you're interested, that information will be out in my newsletter. I am planning on sending my August newsletter out a little early. I kind of skipped July. We had a lot going on, so we'll split the difference. It'll be sometime mid-July to late July, and that will include the signups for this round of the Academy. We did sell out the summer version, so I do encourage people interested to go ahead and sign up, and I would love to have you in Best Laid Plans Academy 2.0. All right, that's all the business we have, and we are going to get into our Q&A episode. So our first question is a little bit of a follow-up from the last episode I recorded last week. And this listener writes, on the podcast episode where you talked about the Hawaii trip that got canceled, how did you help your kids work through it? I have a 10-year-old, and I feel like half the disappointment is something she needs to experience, and halfway I want to protect her from it by not telling her about stuff until I know it's going to happen. The trials of motherhood, this person writes. So I tend to be a very honest person when it comes to the kids. I don't feel like there's a lot I try to protect them from, although I guess there are always limits there. But when it happened, I was with my daughter, and I got a phone call that my husband's leg was broken. And of course, we were very worried about him. And I don't remember if I said it or she said it, but we were like, oh, our trip, like it's not happening. And I think we both looked at each other and had a shared moment of sadness, even that early on in everything, because we had planned the trip together and we talked about it all the time. But honestly, I mean, my kids have pretty good lives, and I think they know that because once this happened, all they cared about was that their dad was going to be okay. And I didn't experience a lot of complaining. It was mostly like, okay, what are we doing instead? How is this going to impact them? Like, will it change their camp situation or anything at all? And would we eventually get to take that trip? And once I told them that, yeah, we would do that trip, it would just be at another time, then they were pretty fine with it. They were able to move forward. And in fact, I got ideas for ways I could plan it even better when we rebook everything. So I guess I would say kids can handle a lot. Maybe in some ways, I like to joke that one of my kids just like only lives in the present. I don't know that kids hinge on the future the way that some adults do, although that's not fair because as I was growing up, I remember like obsessing over what my birthday was going to be like and things like that. So of course kids experience anticipation, but I think as long as you offer them an avenue, I do think that for kids, a month in the future probably doesn't seem that different than a year in the future. So as long as you offer some future alternatives, then that will help with processing. Perspective helps. They understand that going to Hawaii isn't something everyone gets to do anyway. And of course, we emphasize that what matters is family togetherness and fun. And how can we make that happen in other ways, even close to home or taking a local trip or things like that. So yeah, that's kind of how we handled it. And I guess my only word, I mean, it's not like I'm that much farther along than you in my parenting journey. You have a 10-year-old, I have a 14-year-old, but I tend to like to be pretty open and honest with my kids. And I think they do generally respond well to that. All right. The next question comes from a new mom, and I'll just read her question here. She writes that she's entered a new season in life. She writes, I just became a mom. I know in your book that says that's when you said you did more planning when you became one because you had to, but I feel like I'm very overwhelmed at the same time. She writes, for context, I had a difficult pregnancy going in and out of the hospital, bleeding with placenta previa for 9 times with each stay ranging from 1 night to 6 nights. Oh my goodness. And then finally, she got admitted and she gave birth at 34 weeks. And then her child was in the NICU for 2 weeks. And then she says, I would love any planning tips you have for me as a new mom in that season where I still want to be organized and productive. I already found it hard to be those things before becoming a mom, especially with my pregnancy, but now it's even harder. Oh my gosh, you have been through it. So the most I will say to you is that you mentioned being productive, and I want you to give yourself a massive, massive break. And I hope that in my book, when I talked about planning as a new mom, I didn't give anyone the impression that when my children were super young and really, really needy, that there was anything productive really going on. It was more about like survival day to day and making sure the absolute necessities happened. And then as the kids got older and I got past that more acute phase, then of course managing all of those moving parts. But you sound like you are in the absolute most acute season. It's a very magical season, but is a very difficult season as well. And it sounds like you were handed it in a really difficult way. So first of all, your main job right now, and your partner, of course, is to make sure your baby's thriving. And if you're doing that, you are being productive enough. So I just want you to know that. And I would reframe what it means to be productive. Does it mean to have a perfectly clear home? I don't think so. I think your main responsibilities are responding to the baby's needs and prioritizing which home needs actually really need to happen to make everybody functional and comfortable. And I do think you can, once you feel ready, start doing a little bit of strategic planning in a very minimal way, such as maybe taking a few minutes while you're nursing or while the baby's asleep to say, like, what are the 3 tiny things I hope to do today that would make the most sense to make me feel better about the day? One of them might be shower. The other might be order groceries online or the simplest possible way. And then I'm trying to get at the fact that I think you should keep things as easy as you can. And I don't think you need to be accomplishing lofty things right now because what you're doing is already amazing. But that I still think that little few minutes spent thinking about what can I do to make the rest of my life easier or to ensure my essential things are taken care of. If I'm on a medicine, I need to make sure I send someone to get that medicine or have it mailed to my house. But things that if you don't do, life will become much harder or much less comfortable. So taking time to prioritize those things, keeping that list incredibly small, and then moving forward. I mean, that's pretty much it. I would not expect anyone with a newborn to have a full calendar or a bustling to-do list or anything like that. I do think some of these tactics are more when your kids get a little bit older and you're balancing different things that they're doing with the things that you're doing, but that will come, I promise, and your system will evolve with it. Right now, I would focus on minimalist planning that helps get you through this tough season and give yourself credit for what you're already doing. I always talk about how I never like to do daily planning in this season because seeing a big page felt almost like I was being mocked, like I'm not getting a page worth of stuff done. So this actually might be the time to downsize and force yourself to really come up with those few things that you want to get done for any given day, and then congratulate yourself that you checked off all 3 things on your list and nothing beyond that. Congratulations. And again, if you're listening to this and you have advice for this new mom listener who had a really rocky start, then go ahead and please share, and I can share it on a future episode. All right, we are going to take a break, and then I have a few more questions. Today's episode is brought to you with support from Green Chef. In my opinion, the best nutrition strategy is to make the healthy options easy. It's one thing to have elaborate plans to follow health trends, but it's another thing entirely to have healthy food on hand, ready to go, that already meets your nutritional goals. Green Chef is a fantastic way to make your healthy lifestyle easy. With Green Chef, every week you get over 40 recipes made with organic produce, responsibly sourced proteins, and no ingredients you can't pronounce. They have meals that come pre-portioned and are ready in minutes. And if you want extra nutrition guidance, they include free, unlimited one-on-one coaching that helps you stay on track. Green Chef is also the only certified clean meal kit as tested by the Clean Label Project, and the most sustainable meal kit with 20% less food waste and 100% offset delivery emissions. I love it when we have a Green Chef week at our house. It means that healthy and delicious meals are just ready to go. No additional mental load required. Head to greenchef.com/50bestlaid and use code 50bestlaid to get 50% off your first month, then 20% off for 2 months. That's code 50bestlaid at greenchef.com/50bestlaid. Today's episode is brought to you with support from IXL, a learning platform that helps support kids in all settings, including homeschool. With schedules that vary, you need summer learning tools that meet you where you are, and you want to ensure that you have ways to keep kids confident with the skills they have before the next school year begins. IXL helps homeschool families maintain steady progress without feeling rigid or overwhelming, and we've used it in our house for years during the summer to keep skills fresh for the next academic level. Everything is organized by grade and subject, so you can quickly find what each child needs without juggling multiple resources. And it's really designed well to keep kids engaged, with celebrations, awards, and visible progress markers. I know my 8-year-old is excited to use IXL this summer to ensure she's fully ready for 3rd grade. Make an impact on your child's learning. Get IXL now. And Best Laid Plans listeners can get an exclusive 20% off IXL membership when they sign up today at IXL.com/plans. Visit IXL.com/plans to get the most effective learning program out there at the best price.
This episode is brought to you by Accenture. When your advertising operations fall out of sync, everything else follows. Spotify and Accenture are working together to reinvent the rhythm of ad sales, using automation, analytics, and smarter workflows to simplify campaign delivery and access better data across the business. The result? Less time spent on operations, more time connecting brands with the moments and fandoms that matter most. Learn more at accenture.com/Spotify.
All right, I am back, and I'm back with another piece of feedback. Do you guys remember when we had a question that was about someone who was overwhelmed by her to-buy list? And she had a bunch of things bookmarked on her phone, but then every time she pulled it out, she would just be like, there's too many things, and then end up not buying anything, even though she really, really needed things like socks. Well, this other listener wrote in with her advice, and I will read her submission. She writes, I am a massive underbuyer when it comes to my own clothing. Partly this is because I loathe shopping, but also I have 2 growing kids, and I find it hard to rationalize buying clothes for myself when they need a new size every year. By the time I've purchased indoor shoes, outdoor shoes, rubber boots, winter boots, and some sort of sandal for both kids, I'm not exactly excited about replacing my own fancy sandals, which are 15 years old with soles worn down to the ground. She writes, my first thought was to get her to ask herself 2 questions for each item on her list. Question 1, does she really, really need to buy the thing? And question 2, does she feel confident she has the money to buy the thing? That will help her assess if there's anything else blocking moving forward other than analysis paralysis and general inertia. Then she writes that one of her goals in 2026 was to dress like an adult. This was an acknowledgement that her wardrobe was in such a state that it could no longer be ignored as she had been doing for years. She said, I made a list of everything I really truly needed, and now each month I take 1 or 2 items from that list, thinking seasonally, and add them to my monthly goals list. So far this spring, she writes, I have purchased sunglasses, a raincoat, t-shirts, and tank tops, and spring-summer linen pants. I have not had a functional raincoat for 5 years. Setting this as a goal forced me to engage with the issue. I don't love the sunglasses, but they work, they were cheap, and they're protecting my eyes. So she writes, by spreading out the purchases over a full year and actually including them on my goals list, it is easier for me to rationalize spending the money, and it keeps it from getting overwhelmed by too many decisions and just not buying anything, which is what I'd been doing for years. So hopefully this helps the listener and anybody else stuck in analysis paralysis. I really like this suggestion to, even with buying stuff, potentially spread it out and acknowledge that it's a project. You want to have a more functional wardrobe, and you're probably not going to solve that issue all at once. So are there ways that you can prioritize, figure out what works for the season, and put it on the appropriate list so you can tackle them? And I also like the 2 questions the person mentioned. I mean, maybe the truth is this person knows in their heart that they can't really afford everything and they're having trouble identifying what's most important. So if it does come down to that, then this will enable them to hopefully move forward on a more appropriate scale. Thank you so much for that feedback. All right. The next question comes from a listener named Nicole, and she writes, whenever the new year rolls around, I get excited for better habits, and I do well at staying diligent with my planning process and keeping up with the to-do list and personal goal planning. But then spring and summer hits, and we like to travel for pleasure a lot as a family, and this screws up the rhythms. It's hard to get back in track then with a regular habit, so it just doesn't happen at all. Any advice? So I love this question because I think it's just so important to acknowledge that life has this sort of seasonality, and it sounds like you might want to work with your natural rhythms instead of against them. So instead of feeling like, oh, I slacked during the busy season of spring and then the summer, you could see it as, okay, this is my personal family-focused or non-goal-focused time, but maybe in the fall, that's when I want to pick things back up and get some fresh start energy and get to the back to school season and bring it for the rest of the year. So there's no rule that you have to approach all of your annual goals at the same intensity with every season. And in fact, if you want to give yourself a purposeful break from all of your goals, you are absolutely allowed to do so. So I hope that reframe helps. We don't have to be all or nothing about our goals. And in fact, we could decide to just be nothing about our goals for a season and pick it back up when it suits us. We are the ones in charge. So hopefully that helps. And then finally, actually, we have 2 more. We have a question that asks about task management. And a little bit of a background is that in Best Laid Plans Academy 2.0, we have a module on airtight task management, and I have participants create their own task management algorithm, and I give them an example. And this person said, I was inspired by this exercise to think about my struggle with things that fall into the I should read or listen to this, but I will read it later. So she says, for example, the dozen monthly emails from my workplace has a lot of redundant info, but I feel like I have one thing where I need to watch a webinar, so I'll save the whole thing. Or I will come across an article that I think is interesting and I'll want to read it later, but I don't have any system for actually grabbing these things. And I tend to grab way more of them than I actually have time to read to have advice. So I think this is such an interesting problem. I've talked about before how some people are natural savers of pieces of information and other people don't have this issue as much. But I was thinking about the idea of a container for this stuff. And you do mention feeling bogged down by having this collection that you feel like you're never really getting to. And at the same time, it sounds like there's a bottleneck where you're saving many more hours of content than you actually have the bandwidth to looking at. So I wonder if this could be dealt with on a either weekly or monthly, depending on what fits you better, basis, where you just throw everything into one folder over the course of a week. You're throwing it into notes or you're throwing the links into a Google Sheet. Like, I don't know, you could use whatever container you want. And then you have time blocked on your calendar that's like consumption time. Okay. And then during that time, that's the time you have to read the stuff or do something with the stuff, process the stuff. And if you get to the end of the time and you haven't read it, you delete it. Or you archive it. Sometimes deleting is hard, but if you put it in a catch-all archive, that's not bothering you and you still feel like you can find it later. And let's say as you're doing that, you're like, oh, but this YouTube, I really did want to watch this. If it comes down to that and it's that important, you could actually schedule it. Like, you know what? I really want to watch this webinar. So I'm going to put it on my calendar for July 22nd at 2:00. I know I'm going to have a break then and I'm going to watch it then. It's that important to me that I would schedule it. And then otherwise you empty everything every week so it never gets totally out of hand. If weekly seems too much, then this could be a monthly or even seasonal ritual. But I do feel like some kind of periodic clean out and also just like acknowledgement of how much time you actually have to go through this stuff is what's missing here. So I would bring that to light and actually schedule it and plan for it and then see what happens. So I will be very curious to know how this works. And if this listener does keep me up to date, then I will share it with you guys as well. All right. Well, that is our episode. Maybe I said I had another one, but that's it. Oh, I had a note. I have a note that I wanted to mention for today. That was on the top of my planner, so I was not going to forget it. And that is just a little erratum. So I answered a question like a month ago where I thought the person's name was Flossie Faye on TikTok, and it turns out it was not. This person was referencing something of Flossie Faye, so I accidentally said something like, oh, Flossie Faye uses this type of planner, and apparently Flossie Faye is pretty big. I don't know her. I'm sure she's awesome. And someone told her that like I had said this, and then she emailed me and was very kind, very nice. She was like, but I don't use that planner. Is there any way you can let people know? And it was totally my mistake. But just so you know, the person who wrote me was just a fan of Flossie Faye, and her name came up, but I misunderstood it to think that it was her. And now in return, I've gotten Flossie Faye lots of clicks today. So thank you for your understanding, and I'm so sorry about that misattribution. You can go to her TikTok page to find out what she actually does enjoy to use for her planning system. All right, well, that has been our Q&A episode for July. I will be back next week with some more planning fun. I have ordered some more physical products for review, and I'm kind of on a roll with this making videos thing, so hopefully we can have more of that. So keep the requests and questions coming, and I will continue to be on your feed every Monday. As always, thank you so much for listening. It means so much if you've gotten this far in the episode. Thank you for keeping the questions and comments coming. I love the little community we've built here. So I'll be back in your feed next Monday.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.